Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Frame Found podcast. I am your host, Chris Tinsley, and for today's episode, we are going to be talking about, call it the, concept of confidence and humility, and how leaning into either one too far is not a good thing. And, got some prompting questions in here to kind of explore that thought a little bit more. And I don't know, even as I was working on creating this outline, trying to figure out the best way to um, what's the best way to have a conversation about this. I guess you can call it like dichotomy or something. Maybe that's the right word. Because I think it's something that maybe people are aware of, like they see it in the world in all aspects. And I guess this episode is kind of is an attempt to like name it and claim it, so to speak. I don't know, just so we can have more conversation about it, much like a lot of the episodes that we've done already. I feel like we're going to need to dive more into this one specifically. I think this is just kind of like the first episode of maybe a few or a series, or, I don't even know. I mean, let me walk that one back a little bit. Like, as I was thinking about creating this outline, I just realized that I'm like, oh, this is like a kind of a concept that's plagued humanity for forever. And I think it's something that's kind of just ingrained in the nature of humans, but we need to understand kind of what it is and why it shows up and how to, like, I guess, sense it, and like, how do you address it? Just all these things, right? Like, just getting a better understanding of these two opposing sides of confidence and humility. So I don't know. I think I think I don't know if there's any other way to like open the show really, other than really like just that, where it's like, let's talk about these two opposing like factors, so to speak, because I think too many people talk about them like in isolation, so to speak. And well, I guess everybody always talks about the other side of it, but it's maybe there's just something that we're missing, because it's like, okay, let's start off the show kind of like this. Like, okay, if you're overly confident, there's a sense of hubris that's associated with that, and I think people can sense that. On the flip side, on the humility side, if one kind of takes the position of they don't know, they start to try it almost becomes a means of like avoidance, of kind of evading any sort of responsibility of that thing, right? And it's a really interesting, I think it's very interesting in this modern era of high complexity that we'll go more into we'll go more into it in the episode, but like where like humility, like unchecked, just the baseline word, like the definition of that is taken as kind of like heroic, right? Like, oh, this person has, the confidence to stand up in front of people and say, I don't know. And I think again, if that's left unchecked, that could actually just be used as like a crutch of sorts, right? On the flip side of that coin, right, you have people that like stand up and they like declare in such a very confident way, whatever the position it is that they have, with with no question, right? Like, and I just think both are wrong because they're not. I think what's important is that these are two opposing things that both need to be present in just the right blend, in order for like trust to like flourish, for progress to happen. And I just think, I mean, I know I'm still trying to open the show right now, but maybe I just already started it. I don't know. I still want to get to these questions, but like what's coming to mind now is I just grew up in this era. I was talking to a colleague of mine a little while ago, and I don't know. We kind of, I don't know, like the mid 2000s, so like 2009, 2010 ish. It felt like that was like a big like productivity hack like era. Um, I just remember there was just like a lot, like that's when like a lot of like productivity tools were coming out, and a lot of like books were like really popular and all that. And God, what's the point that I'm trying to make right now? I feel like that's when these concepts maybe first kind of came up in the, in the zeitgeist, in the like lexicon of modern work, so to speak. Or maybe that's just when I really had more exposure to complex work. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking through this like as we're talking right now, but like I'm just noticing since that time period, right? You go on like LinkedIn and you see all these really like short posts that it's like it's a declarative thing, and like let's just, for the sake of conversation, you can kind of like bucket these things, these posts, these whatever, like this piece, like these pieces of content, so to speak, into like like two buckets. You can put it in like the confident one, or in the, oh my God, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not humorous. That's not the other word for humility. Whatever. I should probably like look that up, but not going to right now because let's just keep like running with it. Humbleness. There we go. Humbleness. Sorry, let me get back to the point. I just think things are like leaning too far in either direction, and we're not talking about what the middle ground looks like. And I think that we're not doing the topic or ourselves any favors by trying to figure out something as nuanced as this with something like a text post or a slideshow on like LinkedIn, or a sound bite for like a reel or a short, or in the comments section, so to speak. I think it's something, part of the reason why I wanted to do this episode is because I've just kind of seen it in over an extended like period of time, and I've seen it as like leadership books come out and all that, and you kind of hear people like misquoting things, and it's like, wait, hold on, pause, but you're not looking at the full picture. Like there's this other side over here. There's kind of a checks and balances, so to speak. So I don't know. This is just a chance to kind of explore the topic, so to speak, in more like, let's look at these two things together is what I'm ultimately trying to say. And I think people understand that, you need both things to be present, but I just think like people, A, don't know how to do that, and B, I think it's important for people to understand when something is swaying too hard to one side or the other, right? And then how do you help bring that back to like the middle, so to speak, right? So, God, I don't know. I'm just talking through this right now. It's like there's so many other episodes regarding that. Whatever, I'll figure that one out. So many things. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and say that was the opening of the show. A little bit long. Thanks for hanging with me on that. So let's go ahead and get into the questions. Why does it feel like people at work either speak in absolutes or never take a position at all? Okay, let's read that one back one more time. Why does it feel like people at work either speak in absolutes or never take a position at all? Okay, let's tie this one back into kind of the opening of the show. I think it's just because people don't understand the costs or the trade-off of taking one position or the other, or taking a position that's a balance between the both of them. I think maybe it's just people aren't understanding these concepts as they're kind of holistically connected. Maybe that's the right term. I don't know. Sounds right. Let's just run with it. And I just think I don't know, maybe we're just living in like a soundbite era, because it's like people hear something. Okay, let me just kind of paint a specific picture just because it's the one that comes top of mind and I've kind of heard it just kind of throughout the years. There's this book called Extreme Ownership, which is a fantastic book. I don't even really want to say I'll try to say the author's names, but like I just feel like I'm going to stutter on it. And just to let you guys know, for the record, whenever I know the answer to something, that's when the speech impediment comes out. So I'll try to kind of see if I can do that. But so the book Extreme Ownership, written by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, great book on leadership. It covers so many things, and maybe I'll do like an episode where I kind of unpack some of those things. But it's this book that like outlines certain like principles, that apply within like a combat setting. But then you can, there's applications to business. It's a great book, but the whole concept of extreme ownership is that you need to own everything around you, right? So if you're encountering a problem, you need to own the creation and the implementation of a solution, right? Like, let's just say that, like, just for the sake of this episode, right? And so I can't think exactly top of my mind. I'm like cycling back through in my head, but like when that book came out, this is what I'm trying to say. When that book came out, and actually these guys also acknowledge it too, is just like everyone's like, yeah, like I told my guys, like you gotta practice extreme ownership. You gotta like own it, right? But then they're not understanding how that doesn't they also have a part in that too, and what does that look like for them? And so it became this really weird, like all or nothing kind of rhetoric of, maybe I'm using the wrong terms, but it's just like, it was just like, yeah, you gotta have your team own their problems, own the solutions. And it's like, yeah, but also like if the team's having trouble, implementing a solution, are you doing everything in your part as a leader to set them up to success, to unblock those things that could be impeding some sort of progress, right? So it's this fundamental misunderstanding. And I do remember that they had a follow-up book called The Dichotomy of Leadership, which I'm a huge fan of that one, just in the very sense of kind of like why it was created. And in the prologue, I don't really know what we would call it, like the foreword, it's when Jocko and Leif are kind of acknowledging that like from the success of the original book, it was huge, but as they started to talk to more people, they kind of realized, oh no, we missed a whole part where there's these things are on a sort of it's on a balance, so to speak, right? You need something on the other side to balance out the principle. And so it was just cool that they saw that in reality, or they just saw that out in the world, and they decided to write a follow-up book, which I thought was that's, even as I'm talking about, like, that's insane. That's wild. That, like, okay, this is something that truly is happening so often that two guys decided to write a follow-up like about that. That's pretty wild. So okay, let me bring this whole point home. My point in bringing up that story is that people don't understand, like, confidence completely unchecked is not good. Humbleness left unchecked is not good, right? There is a balance, there is a middle ground, right? And I think just because people don't understand, um, the costs and the trade-offs of each, they don't know how to, like, manage that. And now I'm realizing as I'm talking more that I already covered a lot of this stuff in the open of the show. So I think what I'm going to do is, I'm thinking, let's go ahead and wrap up this question. I'm just going to kind of like end it right here. And let's move on to the next question. What pressure pushes people towards certainty on one end and ambiguity on the other? So I thought this was a really interesting question. The first thing that came to mind, even as like I'm like reading these questions and I'm getting prepared to do the show, right? The first thing that comes to mind, and it still is just coming to mind, and I do want to explore it a little bit more. But let me just ask the question and then I'll give the answer so we can keep this conversation like flowing smoothly. What pressure pushes people towards certainty on one end and ambiguity on the other? I just think it is, there's a default to one or the other, right? There's one to play, it's not a hero, but like to like stand tall and to take a stand on something, right? But then there's another one to kind of play like a victim, to like, so to speak, like that's if it goes too far and unchecked. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of it's coming from fear. I think if you just peel back the layers on all of it, if you push too far to either side of the spectrum, it's being driven by fear and not understanding like the nuances between the two things. But here's the thing though, if you decide to take the position of the middle, you're going to have a lot more people coming after you, because that's a position that's really hard to defend, right? Like, when you look at either side of the spectrum, you're kind of like, you're behind this kind of like wall of protection of something that is very, very singular, like focused and easy to defend. Like, if you're too confident, maybe that's you're able to stand behind more of like a tyrannical position. Maybe not. Maybe tyrannical is not the right word, but I don't know. You can kind of like push your weight around a little bit if you have that kind of confidence. But then on the other side, like the humbleness, and it's not even really humbleness. It's like, it's a fear of commitment, but masking it behind a facade of humbleness, right? I don't know. It's interesting. Just like if you just go too far to either side, it's just a mask, like either way, right? But then if you're sitting in the middle, right, maybe you're just more prone to attacks, and it's hard to defend the position, I guess. Like, like, okay, like if you take the person on the confidence side, what argument could they make? Like, I don't know. They just kind of stand there with like a level of confidence. And if they have a level of power, then you can't really, and they're not willing to have the conversation, then they're just there and you can't pull them into the middle. But then the person on the other side, who's on like the humble side, so to speak, I just feel like the defense that's always in that place is, well, I don't know. And, I think that's okay. And that's a gracious like thing of me, and I just think, we'll go into some other questions like in the podcast, but I think it's really important. And like, I'm planning on doing an episode about that. Like maybe I'll do it like for this weekend, but let me bring the whole point home. So I just think in this age of artificial intelligence and the evolving complexity of just things in general, I do feel like maybe there's more of a gravitation back towards like the human component of things, of reading, for instance, like body language and non like verbal cues. So the reason why I wanted to bring that up is that I think it's important in the modern era of complexity, of politics, of large groups of people trying to organize towards a common goal, that you need to use your human senses to kind of to try to get more inputs to understand the situation that you are navigating, because words alone, if you're not taking in other inputs, it'll kind of create a dissonance of sorts. And from there, I think human beings are very fascinating, where, if somebody feels like there's a dissonance between two ideas or people or things or just whatever, right? If there's that tension, if there's that kind of like friction, right? Like, it's going to create a distrust in one person, but then if that's not addressed, then it will turn back onto the other person, and then you just kind of have this cycle that slowly starts to corrode away at things. So I guess that's more so in the topic of like trust. But let's bring this one all the way back home. What pressure pushes people towards certainty on one end and ambiguity on the other? Honestly, I think at the end of the day, it's fear. And everything else that I was just talking about, I think that's something else that we need to explore, because that's where fear comes from. And this is kind of how it shows up. So I think that's the best way to put a bow on this, right? Let's end it. Let me read it back so we can just put a bow on this one completely. What pressure pushes people towards certainty on one end and ambiguity on the other? I believe that it is fear. Fear is what drives people to take these positions that they have. And I think it's important to understand it, and it's for a whole other episode, is just how do you then help others, help your team manage fear? When does confidence start to feel like hubris, and when does humility start to feel like avoidance? Okay, so this goes back into the previous question of that answer. It's the human component, right? I think it's just using the human senses, that like if something is like communicated in such a way that is such a matter of fact thing, I think maybe take caution with that. I think I don't know. It's interesting. I think, God, let's just read that one back, because my mind's going to so many different places. Like, it's even thinking about what I'm thinking about as I'm answering the question, right? Like, I'm not taking a position on either side of it. And like, is that confident, or is that humble, or is this the middle? I don't know. Like, now it's almost like we're kind of going into like an inception of sorts. Like, maybe we're almost like a dream, like within a dream. I don't know, maybe we'll explore that in like the rest of the episode, but let me just bring it back to this question. When does confidence start to feel like hubris, and when does humility start to feel like avoidance? Oh, I don't know. It's I've seen it just throughout the years. All groups that I've worked with, all like people from everywhere, right? It's not isolated to any like one group of people or anything. It's like it's a universal thing. Like, I just think if somebody, so on the confidence side, like, when does it start to feel like hubris? It's like when it's such a declarative thing, whatever the thing is. If nobody wants to like meet in the middle, or if somebody's like, if somebody's really quick to justify the position, then I think that there's a level of hubris there, right? I don't know if you use the first thing that comes to mind is like the scientific like method. Like, if somebody has a hypothesis, like, let them exercise that and challenge that, and run something that is, like a metric based provable kind of thing. Maybe now I'm thinking about it, like maybe that's kind of hard to do in something that's like a soft topic like confidence. But like my point is like you should always let things be challenged. But actually that's a whole different topic. I think let's just keep it back with the confidence thing. Like it needs to be challenged. Or challengement needs to be accepted. And I think if it's not, then maybe there's kind of a question. There's cause for some concern there, where it's like, okay, how are we not able to question the position? So again, when does confidence start to feel like hubris? I don't know. I think when it's being communicated in like simple forms, I think maybe that's when it's hubris. I don't know. God, I'm just thinking about like LinkedIn posts and announcements and conversations and books, and man, I don't know. I guess I can't really answer that question. I mean, here's the thing though. Even if I answer the question, wouldn't that almost be like me being too confident on that? I don't know. That's kind of like that's a meta thing right there. So, but I don't know. Maybe that's a good place to end this part. But I do need to actually answer the second part of the question. When does humility start to feel like avoidance? I don't know. I think this one's actually kind of interesting, just from like an operations perspective. I think, like from a mechanical perspective, like a systems perspective, like it's not to say that things are like a pass fail, but like if a certain like let's just say like a technical process doesn't work, it's kind of a pass fail. Let's walk this one back. And when does humility start to feel like avoidance? I just think like if you're trying to solve a problem that is a measurable problem, or that has a measurable output or outcome, and X amount of time has gone by, then maybe that could be avoidance of sorts, where, God, I don't know. This is such a fascinating question. Like, okay, let's just walk the whole thing back. When does confidence start to feel like hubris, and when does humility start to feel like avoidance? I don't know. I'm just realizing now as I'm talking through all this and I'm reading this question back again, I think human instinct says a lot about that, where you kind of just smell like something's off. And I don't know. I guess I kind of have to do an episode about all that. It's kind of come up in the past few episodes, so maybe I just need to explore that more. So I don't know. I'm just going to end that question there, because I think there's just too much else that is there. How do both extremes quietly break trust and momentum in the same way? Okay, so I think at the end of the day, if you take the position of either side, I think people can sense that taking, again, the position of either side is being used as like a crutch of sorts. And I think the result of that is like a distrust kind of starts to ensue, right? And I think, that's where things, man, I don't know. Okay, so here's what's in my head right now, is that like, okay, let's think about that. There's a distrust in the person or the position or the initiative, whatever, right? Okay. And it spawned from like I guess what I'm just trying to say is that like if people sense a dissonance of sorts, then trust starts to fall out, or it starts to like fall through, right? And like I don't even know, like I'm just thinking now, like, God, there's like so many more episodes now about that topic, where it's just like, oh, I don't know, because then that's like you're talking about like a whole bunch of other things of like how do you create and maintain trust? What are some things that kind of create a distrust, whether it's in people, processes, or systems, or things in general? But like, I don't know. Like, I gotta walk this one back, guys. I gotta walk it back. How do like both extremes quietly break trust and momentum in the same way? Both positions aren't honest. People can sense it, and because of that, there's a distrust that ensues. And the whole topic of trust is just, it's got to be a whole other episode that we talk about. And yeah, let's end that question there. What does healthy conviction actually look like when you don't have all the answers? So, to respond to that question, I think it would be foolish to a degree, I guess, to even try to answer that question in a way. I don't know. It's actually interesting. Like, is it almost a paradox or a contradiction that I even try to answer this question? Right? I don't know. That's just kind of a weird, like, meta thing to think about, I guess. But let me get back to the point. So let's ask this question again, and let's try to answer it in the best way I can. What does healthy conviction actually look like when you don't have all the answers? I think that goes back to human like nature. I can't help but feel like it all comes back to that, where it's like you're gonna have to kind of pick up on the verbal and the nonverbal cues. Like, it's almost, what's kind of funny is, like, in a meta like way, you're watching this episode, you're watching me answer a question and try to stand behind an answer to a degree, but I'm also not taking a position of like, oh, I just don't know, or I'm not standing here in a declarative way, right? But you're watching me, you're literally, I don't know, this whole podcast is really me like wrestling with these ideas, but like, you know, you could say that like wrestling with an idea is a form of humbleness, I guess, right? Like, you're not committing either way to a thing, but at a certain point, you do have to make a commitment, right? You can only like wrestle the thing for so long. I don't know. It's interesting. Like, as I was kind of like reading that question and like I'm thinking about it in ways that it's shown up throughout the years, it's like, I don't know, like, if you're talking about a topic, right? Like, let's just say you have the topic, but then there's really kind of like three like domains or arenas tied to that one topic. And when you see one person kind of make a commitment towards, you know, one of the three, like, has a position on it, or two of the three, right? But then there's a humbleness associated with like part three. Like, I don't know, maybe there's like a trust that comes along with that, but like the person who like stands up and declares, I know this whole subject, and I know the three specific like nuances, right? Or I know everything about this one subject, and we don't need to talk about the subset of like the three. It's just, I know it. Versus, you know, you got the person on the other side, the humble one, who's just like, I don't know any of this, and that's okay, because, you know, I'm here to learn, right? But like, much like wrestling with an idea or trying to like learn a topic, right, is a form of, I guess, if left unchecked, is a form of evasion, right? So it's like, at a certain point, like, okay, maybe it's this. Again, because like we're thinking like through this thought, like, what does healthy conviction actually look like when you don't have all the answers? Like, maybe it's kind of something like that, where it's like, okay, I'm trying to figure out the best way to articulate this. Like, and maybe it does come off as like contrarian, but it's like, maybe the thing's just not about the thing at all. Maybe it's like, what does healthy conviction actually look like when you don't have all of the answers? God, I don't know. Just reading that question back, I think it's just the like verbal and the verbal cues. I think it's just being able to read people's like body language and tone and all of that. I just can't help but feel like a lot of those things come back to that. Yeah. I don't know. And it's interesting how it shows up throughout the day. And it's like, I don't know, this is like a really weird example. It's just something that kind of just popped in my head right now. But it's like, you know, we had a concern with the HVAC like system in our house and brought a technician over to the house. And it's always interesting whenever you meet like a vendor of sorts, you know, if you're doing like a home improvement project or something like that, because like you sense that tension. Like nothing was even said. Like, you know, like you're shaking hands, there's eye contact, right? And like you can tell the person's trying to understand if they can trust you, if you can trust them. You know, is this somebody that I need to like look out for when they like enter my house? I don't know. This it shows up in like a lot of different ways. And like I just mean like in the world in general. And it's like, are we just not giving any sort of like are we just not applying those feelings to like other like domains, right? Is that why there's all this like friction that is being created? Is that a reason why a lot of these, for instance, kind of like cringy like LinkedIn posts exist, and why people are engaging with them in such like a crazy like high volume way? I don't know, but I just think it's interesting. There's just verbal and non like verbal ways of communicating that us humans do that I don't think that we're giving enough credit to. And I think because of that, there's a distrust that ensues, and then friction is created. And then, I don't know, a random guy like me just comes and creates a podcast to like wrestle with the idea of it, like even more. I don't know, who knows. But let's try to bring this question home. What does healthy conviction actually look like when you don't have all the answers? I don't know. I really don't think that I can answer that question, because when I look throughout the years of working with different groups and teams, it's kind of like when you're meeting that technician or the vendor of sorts, where you just have a feeling, you have a hunch, and there's either a trust or a distrust that ensues. And I think that I have to explore the topic of trust a little more in depth on future episodes. All right, you guys, let's go ahead and bring this entire episode home. Guys, we're gonna call this the closing segment of this show. I don't know. Thanks for tuning in, like most of all, right? I think as I'm just thinking about how to kind of close out the show, and I'm kind of thinking back to like, you know, these questions and, you know, the responses that I had to them, you know, much like other episodes, it's like I feel like it just spawns some other topics, right? Where it's like, you know, I feel like the next thing that I would like to talk about, to kind of unpack a little bit more, is the concept of trust. And like, that's an insane topic. Like I don't even know where to start with that one, because that's just huge. And I think, I don't know, I hope you guys gleaned something from this episode where, I mean, like for me personally, like, I don't know, for me personally, and this is kind of the reason why I created this podcast, was that like, okay, this is a topic that, you know, I observe, that I wrestle with, right? And it is kind of fun, you know, to kind of take on the challenge of, you know, speaking to a camera, right? I'm, you know, speaking to you all. I'm trying to like form and articulate a thought, right? And then it's helping me to understand the thought in more depth. But then from there, I'm like realizing like, oh God, I got to go over here now to kind of explore that thought like a little bit more, and kind of understand how it's tied in to this other thing here. And so I don't know. I think that that's kind of fun. I think that's cool. I think, I hope you guys enjoy that. I hope you guys get something from that. And I guess, I don't know. I hope you guys just enjoy that. But, you know, a thought that's in my head right now is, I don't know, it's interesting as we're kind of exploring more of these things that like, and I got to be careful about, you know, how far I pull on the thread, or, you know, I don't want to come off as like a contrarian of sorts. It's just like, the more that I'm looking at a problem, I'm understanding that it's actually being caused by something else over here. So I guess I'm just kind of like on the hunt for like the truth, the understanding, like how does something come to be? Why does something exist? God, what? I think I kind of want to just explore this thought a little bit, just because since it just popped in my head. Like, I don't know, it's fun. Like, if we were to now draw a parallel to like solutions architecture for like a work management like platform, right? Like, let's just look at something like that, something that is programmatic, something that is not necessarily a pass fail, but like either the thing works or it doesn't. Like, to a degree, I'm simplifying this thing like a little bit, right? But it's like, if you're programming some sort of automation, like, and it fails, right? Like, okay, why? Like, oh, because this thing wasn't connected properly to this thing, right? So, okay, now we got to relook at the configuration of how maybe like a data set over here is like tabulated or something, right? Maybe we need another like field of like 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 metadata or something like that, right? There's all these different permutations and these combinations to kind of make some sort of like a system from a technical lens work, right? And so I think maybe it's just such long exposure to those types of things over the years that like, and I've always been like a humanist. I don't know what the word would be, but I've always liked the psychology of humans and just, getting groups of people to like band together towards a common goal. And just like the more as life goes on and I'm doing all these technical things, it's just like, oh, like this is totally applicable to this stuff over here. So like if this is kind of the approach that's taken to solve a technical system, I mean, I guess you could almost say that like, the relationship like between humans in the context of charging towards common goals is also just a highly technical like system, but there's way more like nuance associated to it, and it's tough to understand each of the skills or to like understand how each thing is connected versus something that's like technical in the case of like a work management platform, right? Like, there's less, I guess there's like less, technically speaking, like less to know. And I don't know, I think that's kind of cool. I guess what I'm just trying to say about this whole thing is that like maybe that is the whole point in this. I mean, I definitely know, or when I say this, I mean almost like existentially, like life. Um, but it's just the whole reason why I formed this podcast, and it's the reason why we work with the teams that we do, right? It's like trying to understand all of these nuances and how they're all connected to one another. And so it's like, yeah, you just watched me wrestle with, the topic of confidence and humbleness, right? But then it just naturally evolved into another thing over here. Or like now we're starting to understand, why people take those positions that they do, like where it stems from, and talking about concepts like fear and like trust. And they're all connected, and it's understanding how they are. And if you're trying to bring a sort of like equilibrium to the system writ large, like you need to understand, are we missing, like, is there a factor of like trust that's missing? If so, how much? How do you offset it? Do you offset it by pouring more in, or do you offset it by taking something else out? Right, these are all just fascinating things to me. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, I don't know. I think just me saying that statement, I just realized, I'm like, God, this whole thing's it's literally a lifelong journey at this point. And maybe that's the whole point. And the whole thing is just you're constantly trying to wrestle with the things, and then to just understand um, different tactics, different means of bringing about the equilibrium of sorts. I don't know. I think that's kind of cool. I think that's kind of fun. I think, yeah. Uh, I don't know. I think. Oh, I don't know. I'm kind of actually curious about this. If maybe people are interested in it. I'm kind of curious to hear people's thoughts in the comments. I don't know. But I am thinking about doing some sort of like jujitsu like series of kind of taking, the principles of like the martial art, and then, applying it to like like systems, problem solving, teams, all that kind of stuff, right? Like something that's really complicated, that there's a lot of like options in order to advance a position or to like maintain a position. I just think I don't know. I thought it was really cool, and I'll try to bring this whole episode home. But I am curious about you guys' like thoughts on this. I was thinking about kind of looking at like Henry Gracie's like book, The 32 Principles, and and kind of taking each of those principles and then seeing how we could apply it from a systems perspective, whether it's technical or soft skill, or just kind of like expand on those things. So I don't know. Let me know your thoughts if that's something that seems like kind of like interesting to you. But yeah, I don't know, guys. I think thanks for taking the time to watch this episode and hear me explore all of these thoughts. And looking forward to seeing you all on the next episode. And we'll talk more soon. Thanks, y'all.